Hello, everyone. So the Russians have just released a piece of, and I might add, a well-made piece of propaganda showing Russian air defense shooting down Santa, as Santa is just trying to deliver presents to the Russians. Now, on the face of it, I'll show you the video in a minute. But the piece of propaganda itself, it's well made. It's a bit tongue in cheek, but the deeper lying the deeper lying meaning of this and the context about the acceptance and the bringing people to understand that this conflict is not going to go away. People are thinking that when Donald Trump gets inaugurated, he's going to wave some magic Trump wand and everything's going to be fine. It's not going to be fine. These wars are going to drag everyone into a global conflict on an industrial scale. Now, I keep saying this. Now, before we talk about the video itself, I think it's key to remember, like, the Russians of all peoples should not be joking about shooting things down out of the sky, because they don't have the best track record. Now, I just want to bring everybody's attention to, I think it was July 20. Well, I'll show you in a minute. 17th of July, 2014. So I'll just read this paragraph here. Malaysian Airlines Flight 17, MH17, better known as MH17, was a scheduled passenger flight from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur that was shot down by Russian-backed forces with a Buk missile system. That there's different variants. That's what the one they're saying it is. Surface-to-air missile on the 17th of July 2014 while flying over eastern Ukraine. All 283 passengers and 15 crew transcended up into beams of light. Contacted with the aircraft, a Boeing 777 was lost when it was about 50 kilometers from the Ukraine-Russian border. Wreckage was found all over. It was found all over Donetsk. The shootdown occurred during a war in Donbass over territory controlled by Russian separatist forces. Now, this is the Wikipedia page. I would agree with this. There's people who are saying, "Oh, it wasn't the Russians, it wasn't these guys," and throwing wild conspiracies in there. But this brings me to mind of what just happened with the Azerbaijan Airlines flight. Again, those strike patterns, not the wounded patterns, the strike patterns on that aircraft are consistent with a surface-to-air missile system, potentially one of these. Now, this comes at a time where, it seems shooting civilian airlines down is just how Russians roll. Now, in my heart, I don't believe these things are done on purpose. I think this is incompetence. It's lack of training, leadership, and I don't, I do believe, and again, this is just my belief and what I think. I don't think the separatists or the Russian-backed separatists that shot down MH17, I don't think they did that purposely, knowing that that was a civilian aircraft. Likewise, I don't think the Azerbaijan Airways flight, if it was shot down by Russians, like I said, I think the strike pattern is consistent with a surface-to-air missile strike. I think these things are done by accident, but remember, it's that word accident, okay? These wars do start by accident, and this is the problem we're moving towards now. So let's just go to the video. I'll play the video in full. I think I'm going to stop it at a couple of places, and I'll give a little bit of commentary. So first of all festivities found, checked, and found to be correct. You've got beautiful Christmas music, you've got a beautiful Christmas scenery, you've got a beautiful tree, which, might I add, puts the London tree to absolute shame.
Ho, ho, ho! Hi, Russians! Here are your presents!
I mean, I think you've got Father Christmas there potentially drinking Coca-Cola, which I think is a bit of a, so that you've got the stereotypical Santa there. He's drinking Coca-Cola because I think there was something I think Coca-Cola bought the rights to him or something. I'm not 100% sure on that. That's why he's a red Santa Claus now. But then obviously in the back of his sledge, you've got all the gifts, I can say. They look a little bit like rockets or something, with the NATO sign on that. So he's a NATO Father Christmas.
Happy New Year! Holy shit!
Again, for me, the Russians shouldn't be joking about shooting things out of the sky. As we've just seen, they don't have a great track record of target identification.
Sure.
Now, I can only assume that this is the Orthodox Father Christmas or the Orthodox Santa. Remember, most Russians are Orthodox Christians, and they celebrate Christmas on the 7th of January.
Все, цель уничтожена.
Правильно. Не нужно нам ничего иностранного в нашем небе. С Новым годом!
И тебя, дед. Всех с Новым годом.
So he's calling him grandfather. I don't know whether that must be I guess that's a Russian thing or something. I don't know. But on the wider concept of things, I've said many times, and I keep giving the example of the German helicopter that was shot at by the Russian warship. Now, these things can happen by accident, and the acceptance and normalizing of Russians just shooting anything down out of their airspace, this is what leads to these conflicts. And I'm putting it out there. I'm saying it now that I think that when this starts full time between actual NATO ships and NATO aircraft with flown by NATO pilots and NATO operators, I think this will be done by accident. And the accident, look at MH17. I would say that was an accident. And again, it was terrible. These things shouldn't happen. You shouldn't give these weapon systems to people who are not trained. I would say that the Azerbaijan Airways flight, that was an accident as well, because in my heart, I can't see how anybody would want to shoot down a civilian aircraft. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but I think these things are accidents. But that in itself is more terrifying, because guess what? Accidents do happen, and we've seen accidents happen. Now, I gave the scenario whereby the Russian, remember when the Russian warship fired on the German helicopter, and it was in the press and it was in the media. But can you imagine how wrong that could have gone? Remember, the Russians have accidents. Everybody have accidents. But if that Russian ship had fired live munitions at that helicopter just by accident, or the captain or whoever was in control, the fire controller would have said, put signal flares in or whatever, and the message didn't get passed down to the operator, and then the operator's thinking, yes, of course, we destroy anything in our sky. Yes, we destroy with NATO patch. These things happen. And then right now, the tension's building up into such that the Germans and NATO and the West in general will have revised rules of engagement. And the rules of engagement will go something like, if the Russians shoot at you, you don't need permission, you shoot back. So you can see here how the chain of events by accident leads to, a sinking of a Russian warship. The Russian captain or fire control officer, he thinks that the Germans have fired back at him because they fired a signal munition or whatever. Then they fire back at the Germans, and then all of a sudden, literally in the space of a couple of hours, you've got sunken warships, you've got downed helicopters, and you've got a whole mess that cannot be cleared up. Because what the hardest thing to get a soldier to do is to start shooting. The second hardest thing to get them to do is to stop shooting. So as soon as these people start shooting, they're not going to be listening to, I mean, do you think they're going to listen to Keir Starmer or David Lammy, who's putting things out on a tweet? Absolutely not. They're going to be fighting a conflict in that contained region. And because both sides here are building up more and more and more munitions, more capacity, more what's the word I'm looking for? More security in depth. These things are just going to expand. And it's kind of like, you know, both sides putting tinder in a box, and both sides are putting more and more tinder in a box, and then they're stacking heavy wood on top and saying, we're not going to start the fire, you're going to start the fire, and them saying, well, we're not going to start the fire, but we've got plenty of wood, you're going to start the fire. And then once that spark happens, I think it's going to be by mistake, but once that spark happens, you know, you can see those fireworks are going to turn into deep burning fires, and unfortunately we are heading towards a global conflict of an industrial scale. Anyway, guys, I'm going to max grade. I'll get you guys another video later.